Welcome to Live a Life. These are the big boys, top of the line flagship smartphones from Samsung and Apple, the Samsung S21 Ultra and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Big phones means big numbers, even on cameras. So today, we're going to test how the camera from these two beasts goes against each other and help you decide which one to buy and what each brand has to offer from their flagship device. Let's get right into it. So first, let's talk about the specs. The Samsung S21 Ultra features 4 camera setups, including the 108 megapixel main shooter, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto lens, and a 10 megapixel 10x periscope zoom lens. Next up, on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, you have a 12 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 12 megapixel 2.5x telephoto lens. So you see that on paper, the Samsung S21 Ultra sounded like it would definitely destroy the 3 boring cameras on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. But we have proved it before that higher numbers doesn't always mean better photos. Click here to check out the video we did about camera resolution. But now, let's see how the S21 Ultra holds up against the mighty iPhone 12 Pro Max. The dynamic range on both phones are very comparable. They really did a great job on balancing highlight and shadow to optimize for the best dynamic range. But the dynamic range on the S21 Ultra is a tad bit better. Here, the shadow on the S21 Ultra still has some detail to be seen, while it is crushed on the iPhone. The detail on both phones is really comparable. When viewing the picture as a whole, both really did a great job capturing the details and the textures. It's only when you really zoomed in that you will see the difference. Like this cable here, where on the Samsung S21 Ultra, there's still lines to be seen, while it's just dots floating in the air on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. However, on the darker area, the iPhone tend to do a better job at maintaining detail. You can see here that there's some electrical circuit on the wall with wire, where it's really hard to distinguish the object on the Samsung. Take a look at the noise here. There is significantly less noise on the iPhone. In this photo, the detail on the S21 Ultra is still better than the one on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, but it has relatively more noise than on the iPhone as well. Turning on the 108 megapixel on Samsung S21 Ultra significantly improved the detail of the photo. In an excellent lighting condition, everything becomes a lot more crisp. Here, you almost see each individual cable, even in the most clustered part, where on the iPhone 12, it's just a mushy looking line using the 12 megapixel camera. Not only that, but dynamic range and noise handling is excellent too. There are parts that the 108 have more dynamic range than on the 12 megapixel. In the more challenging lighting conditions, things change a bit. Details on the 108 megapixel is still superior to the 12 megapixel on the iPhone, where texts are a lot sharper and a lot more readable. The picture is so detailed that you can even see the texture of the braided cable of the back here. However, the not so great lighting scenario does cause more noise. Every inch of the image, even the brighter area, has a lot more noise on the 108 megapixel photos, but it's not on the point that it's unacceptable. It will be significant only when zoom in. Oh, and the dynamic range is still better on the 108 megapixel. This part is totally overexposed on the iPhone, while there are still colors and detail on the Samsung. If you guys are familiar with the previous S20 Ultra, it has a problem with the autofocus, which they have solved in the Note 20 Ultra by integrating the laser autofocus system, which is also here in the S21 Ultra, and it worked like a charm. If the background is not too busy, the autofocus is really fast and accurate. It's even snappier than on the iPhone as well. But it doesn't seem to focus that well when the subject is moving in and out and when there's a lot of things in the background, while it's no problem in either situation for the iPhone. It is a little smoother as well. We could say that throughout the test, The white balance on the S21 Ultra is often more accurate than on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. White appears to be white, while everything on the iPhone tends to shift towards a warmer tone, causing the white to turn yellow. But here is where it gets interesting. The color on the iPhone looks a little fuller when compared with the S21 Ultra. It is more saturated and more vibrant. And even with the warmer tone, the white from the iPhone appears to look more white, while the Samsung's white has a cooler tone to it, causing it to look a little blue. Regarding cross-lens consistency, both phones did a very amazing job, although the iPhone 12 Pro Max Ultra Wide appears to be a little green. It's not really that noticeable, and doesn't really affect much to your final photo. Also, the Ultra Wide on the S21 Ultra tends to have a little magenta tint to it. It's not a deal breaker, of course. In low light, both still took okay looking photos. With night mode off, the photo from S21 Ultra is brighter in darker area. However, the brighter part of the image was overexposed on the Samsung, while on the iPhone still managed to keep under control. The iPhone has more detail in the darker area as well. Like this pole on the iPhone, you can still see the white branches on top of the pole, while on the S21 Ultra, the area on top of the pole got denoised so hard, the branches magically disappeared. So another point for the iPhone here. The house on this corner as well. Even though it's not that great on the iPhone, the Samsung has a lot worse. It's all mushy and no detail to be seen. Turning the night mode on is where both phones really shine. They really improved the image quality on both phones. Here, Samsung is a little bit brighter, and the overexposed part is in control. But the iPhone still has more detail in the photo. Oh, and this time, the iPhone is oversaturated here, but the Samsung looks a little pale from what it actually looks like as well. Another thing to notice is these trees right here. The color green looks a little bit deeper and more saturated on the S21, while it looks a little paler on the iPhone. Next one, let's get back to those branches. While you can see the branches of the pole on the Samsung, the iPhone lets you see the tile grid here when it's just a mushy area on the Samsung. Next up is the noise reduction. The noise reduction on the S21 is so good that there's actually zero noise to be seen, while there's still some noise on the iPhone. However, the clean image comes at the cost of losing contrast, and overall, the image becomes soft and mushy. Shooting 108 megapixel in low light is actually a no-no. Not only the detail is not good, the dynamic range is even worse. The highlight on the Samsung is really overexposed, while on the iPhone still looks great in detail. When compared to the 12 megapixel on the iPhone, there's even more detail than on the 108 megapixel from Samsung. It's only at the perfectly lit part that the 108 megapixel has better detail, but in a scenario like this, I'll say I'll use the 12 megapixel mode for a cleaner image. Both phones can produce natural bokeh. Here, the Samsung S21 Ultra has a more blurred background than on the iPhone, especially when shooting at night with lights in the background. For portrait mode, both did a very comparable job, but the Samsung S21 does a slightly better job at separating the object from the background. Most of the edge of the leaves are totally blurred on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, while on the S21 still recognized as leaves. But personally, both bokeh still look sort of artificial to me. What about you? What do you think? Comments down below. Shooting with portrait mode in low light is really challenging for both phones, but the S21 Ultra comes on top and could focus on the subject, while the iPhone 12 Pro Max can't. But at least the plant pot on the iPhone looks much better. So it comes down to preference. Do you want the pot or do you want the leaves? Unfortunately, there's a problem with 12-bit RAW files from Samsung S21 Ultra. There are color fringing and aberration everywhere, while the JPEG works fine. so we can't really compare it with the Pro RAW on the iPhone just yet. Let's hope Samsung fixes this issue real soon so we could do Apple Pro RAW versus the 12-bit RAW files on Samsung. And I think that's pretty much it. What do you think? Which one do you prefer? Comments down below, and as always, image files will be in the link in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and click on the bell icon to see more great contents in the future. There are still many S21 series content coming up, so please stay tuned. See you guys next time. Stay safe.